You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players, and all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Welcome back, everyone, to Arsenal Pass, episode 143. This week on the pod, we're talking about the reveal, or the return, Brendan, the triumphant return of Rhinar to Classic Constructed. Everyone has been very, very happy. It's been a unanimous kind of response on Twitter. Brendan, I don't know, are you on Twitter these days? You on X? Are you jeeting, as you like to say?
Nah,
he's done.
I don't know. Twitter's an interesting platform. It exposes you to information, which makes you more aware of your surroundings, but it's also mostly negative. So, I don't know. Yeah, I'm off Twitter for now. I just found myself in my free time just like always scrolling Twitter, which is pretty much the same as scrolling shorts, which, yeah, it's the world we live in.
TikTok. This week on the pod, we can talk about, I guess, the triumphant return of Rhinar has not been seen the same by many. I know I got some interesting messages, Brendan, after we showed Rhinar off as the latest hero to join in with heavy hitters. We're going to talk about kind of what that means for Classic Constructed. I'm pretty optimistic and pretty excited about Rhinar. We did a bit of a Patreon pod, we dropped it as our preview cards went live, and then we talked a bit about kind of the heroes so far, our thoughts on what this might mean for the game. But I've had even more thoughts, Brendan, since then, particularly about Rhinar. So we can talk a bit more about Rhinar and, answer the question, Brendan, will Rhinar win a Pro Tour in 2024? The answer's clearly yes. Lock it in for LA.
It's a question now, because in the title of this video, it's definitely a statement. Rhinar will win a Pro Tour in 2024.
Oh, okay. Well, then we'll say that. Rhinar will win. Lock it in. You heard it here first. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Heavy Hitters Limited. We kind of have a bit of an understanding of what this limited format might shake out like, and I think it's an interesting time to just take a first glimpse at Heavy Hitters Limited. But anyway, new year, new you. How was your New Year's? Happy 2024.
Yeah, I did absolutely nothing. So New Year's Eve, I did a 10-mile run, a race, which sucked ass because it was at 6 a.m. and it was like 30 degrees. So yeah, that was fine. And then I just did nothing for the rest of the day. I felt like death. Yeah. Awesome, right?
So you had a great end to 2023.
Yeah, that's
Wait, was
how
that
you
New
know.
Year's Day or New Year's Eve?
That was New Year's Eve in the morning. Yeah. That's how you know you're getting old, is when someone's like, oh, what kind of stuff did you do? And it's not like partying. It's not seeing friends. It's like, oh, I just did this like shitty activity to make myself feel good about myself.
All right. Well, I won't say what I did then. No.
What'd you do?
I just spent some time with friends. It was great.
Yeah, you partied, didn't you?
No, I didn't actually. I woke up pretty clear-headed on the first, so I stayed up. So okay, Sydney is like really well known for this massive fireworks display on New Year's Eve. I don't know if you've ever heard about this before, Brendan.
Nope.
They spend apparently $6.2 million on this fireworks display, right? Taxpayer money well spent.
Dollar dues or real dollars?
Australian dollars.
Okay.
So like 4.5 million or 4 million US, whatever. The exchange rate isn't that bad, my friend. It's not that bad. But so I hadn't really looked. I'd never really seen it before. I was like, it's just fireworks. Like, who cares? I've lived here for now. This will be my 7th, I think, New Year's or 6th New Year's. And I was like, I don't need to see this. This time I got a good view. Was with some friends and I saw it, and actually it was pretty spectacular, to be honest. So I now understand why people come from around the world to see this fireworks display. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, they do a pretty crazy one in Bangkok that I've seen like 4 or 5 times on the river, and yeah, I don't know. You think fireworks are fireworks until you don't see them for a while, and then you see them again. You're like, holy shit!
It's pretty cool.
It's pretty wild. Yeah.
All right, let's get into some news. Not much happening, I guess. Like this is. We've been saying it's off season. I think LSS can completely shut up shop for the last 2 weeks. So not too much being published news wise when it comes to Flesh and Blood. But we did reveal the latest hero for heavy hitters over the weekend, which is Rhinar, Reckless Rampage, and Rhinar into the limited format. And Beat Chest, kind of. We were meant to reveal Beat Chest, but it did get sort of slightly accidentally shown a little bit early when it was uploaded to one of the LSS pages, but we got to show Beat Chest a little bit, and our Rhinar specialization card, Show No Mercy, as well, which we'll talk a little bit more about. If you haven't seen Brendan and mine doing some great acting as per usual in our little snippets that we upload for every preview, you can go and check that out on Twitter.
That was hard, bro. Filming that video.
Brendan sent me the video, and the opening of the video just says, this is so cringe. And then he proceeds to do exactly what he was told. So thank you. The other thing I want to shout out, just news-wise, I guess, while we're in the section, so I can use this platform, is we're into 2024. We did put a post out to our patrons saying, what content do you want to see in 2024? And I'm extending that to all Arsenal Pass listeners. What content do you want to see from us in 2024? Not saying that we'll do it, but, throw your suggestions in the YouTube comments if you're watching this on YouTube. Otherwise, if you are one of our patrons and you're in the Discord, go into our Discord and chuck it in the feedback channel there. But yeah, love to know kind of what content you might want to see in 2024. Brendan is planning to do like some interpretive Flesh and Blood dance, I believe.
I was going to say, I'm really interested to see where Flesh and Blood content goes in 2024 in terms of like how it levels up. Because obviously when we started back in like early 2020, significantly different. I mean, there was like no content on, but I wonder if we'll see a new big podcast. I know, for me, the headliner of 2023 for content is probably, and I know it gets mentioned a lot on this podcast, probably Free Floating, like that channel coming into its own, and that level of production and that style of production, I think has made Flesh and Blood palatable to an audience that potentially wasn't watching content before. So I'm interested to see what our next level up, in 2023, what our next level up in 2024 will be for Flesh and Blood content. Or will we stagnate? Will we peter out? Is it just going to get better? I don't know.
Brendan's going to issue the challenge there. Make it better.
Yeah, I'm not going to be doing it. Somebody else got to do it.
All right, let's go to the Command Cookout. And as per usual, or I guess newly as per usual, we're going to talk YouTube comments. But first of all, do have a question from the Discord, Brendan. This comes from Rob saying, with the winter months, we've had lower attendance of armories, and this skirmish season for us was not well attended. How do we as a community keep players coming back and continue to get players into the game? Now, this is something I wanted to bring up because I have heard this has been similar in my area as well. And I know I couldn't have a bit of an issue with some of the timing of skirmish season, particularly this last season. I didn't get to go to a skirmish, which I would have liked to have played, but it really revolved around Worlds, so it was hard to get to. But yeah, I think this is an interesting question. We come into December, and last year this time we had Dynasty release, right? So there was some incentive for people to go and play. There was a new set out, right? But now there's, this is literally kind of almost completely dead air until we hit heavy hitters. So I don't know, how do we keep armory? Does it matter? Is it fine to have
it doesn't matter. I mean, for the game, it definitely matters. Doesn't matter for us. Doesn't matter for Rob. I mean, probably to an extent. This is an interesting topic in Flesh and Blood because Flesh and Blood has always been cyclical in terms of attendance and armories, and also cyclical on the micro, which is set by set, month to month. Maybe people are taking off because it's winter, maybe people take off because it's summer and they want to be outside more, but that's probably unlikely. But also on the macro, right? Flesh and Blood, once it started to gain traction, armory attendance way up, and then it kind of it lulls a bit, and then it comes back. So there's the inherent nature. It's also regional based. I know some regions, they maintain attendance throughout the year, throughout the sets, and then other regions, we frequently hear about this, because right now I think it's almost a categorical down period, but even in periods that are relatively fresh and relatively new, we get comments like this about armories not being attended, stores dropping the game, etc. So I do think that this winter period, this end of year period is, like I said, almost an objective down period, and that will lead to less armory attendance and potentially less attendance in skirmish. How does the community keep people coming back to get new players to the game? I mean, that's really interesting. I don't have the answer, so I want to ask you a question, Hayden. What really facilitates players going to a game store to play a game, especially in the context of an online alternative existing or analog existing? Is it things like prize support, armory structure, like this OP structure that Legendary Studio puts on, or is it the communities in and of themselves that create a culture in which people come back to consistently to see their friends, have a social experience, etc. What is the main motivator that keeps up armory attendance? Is it promos? What is it?
I think it's a few things. I think so getting people in the door, first of all, you've got to have something enticing. You've got to have a program that's enticing. Is the current armory structure that? I think it could be improved for sure, and I have some ideas based on this. I've been thinking about this question as well, so that's why I kind of grabbed this question. I was thinking about this, what Rob's asked. So I can touch on that in a second, but I think it's a couple of things, right? I think, first of all, you got to get people in the door. So I think you need a structure there that entices, and whether that is, like you say, it's promos, maybe it's an opportunity to try different formats, maybe it's a really approachable way to get into the game. I know, like for me, when I first played Magic the Gathering, for instance, I was looking for places where I could go and draft because I didn't own cards. So like I wanted to, and that's me personally, but I was like, well, Constructed, I don't have cards for this. I don't know anyone, so I can't ask to borrow anything. Like if I can find some limited events, that's how I'm going to get into this game. So, and to me, it's really hard to find limited events in Flesh and Blood because, and like, this is a deeper problem, I think, but the more entrenched players don't particularly want to play limited, right? So for the most part, like that just kind of is how it is, right? People would rather play Constructed and Blitz. So it's a bit harder from that standpoint. And then I think in terms of keeping them coming back, like that is LGS based, the way that they run their events, what events they're running, how they interact with the community itself within that, and how they support and I guess nurture their Flesh and Blood community. Like that is a big part of it, obviously. But I think, there's still stuff that LSS could be doing. For instance, right now we're in a pretty low period of time. Do you remember, and maybe this is thinking of fond memories, but the Farewell Welcome to Wraith events that they did, those events were like massive in my area. And I'm pretty sure from like anecdotally, I heard they were all pretty big.
When was that? Can you remind me, like in regards to like in between?
It was after PT1.
Okay.
It was after PT1.
So yes, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that was also like, in my opinion, that was like the apex of Flesh and Blood. Like Flesh and Blood was popping off then. So I do think Farewell Welcome to Wraith, sick event. It enticed me to go. I love Welcome to Wraith. Also, the set was rotating. There was a good structure to it, and it was like a special thing stores could have. So I win. It was awesome. But also during PT1, I mean, Flesh and Blood was like, at least in my experience of reality in my sphere, it was like the freaking game at the point. Because we just had our first pro tour. We're like, oh my God, we're going to have more of these. This is a circuit. And I just felt like optimism and interest in the game was at an all-time high then as well. Do you think they could rerun something like a Farewell Welcome to Wraith style kind of thing now and it would have the same effect?
Well, I think potentially. I think it could look a little bit different. I think I would give a wider time period and allow stores to run it when they wanted based on what the community wanted, so that they have these kind of, and even maybe it's like a league. They're like, oh, for December, it's a quite a month, but we're going to run this league for the first 3 weeks of December, or even into the first 3 weeks of December and 2 weeks in January. And at the end of it, there's going to be some prizes based on, whatever. And there's some special promos. It's an event. I think they need to bring some lore into it as well. Because whenever they're just like, oh, there's a skirmish event, it's like, okay, we're back to skirmish. But what does like skirmish mean? Like, what is, I can't even tell you. I think, actually, no, it was a cold foil Teklo core.
Yeah.
Was the
promos,
foil, which is pretty cool.
Promos are so important too. I mean, that's
I think they need to mean something. I think they need to mean something
for sure.
Well,
but how do you do that? Because it's an inherently Ponzi-nomic structure, right? Like the more promos you inject into a game, the less interesting they are,
for sure,
the less valuable they are. How do they maintain something like that? Because if I look at a game like Lorcana or One Piece, like their promo structure. Lorcana is a very young game, so inherently the promo structure is very, very valuable at the beginning of a game. I don't know if it'll teeter off, but in One Piece, they are very promo related or promo first. How does Flesh and Blood reinvigorate that sort of promo system to incentivize players to go out to events to try to win them? And a lot of sometimes you get a really cool promo, but a lot of times there is like a base financial gain that you're getting by winning that promo as well. How do they get that back?
Well, I also think that maybe they need to make the XP system worth something again. Like in terms of, I like this potential we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the kind of move away from PT invites on XP makes sense now that the Elo system's developed. But now what does XP mean other than getting your name on the leaderboard? And that is great, don't get me wrong. I think that's a great incentive for some players.
Invited to Queenstown, I guess.
Wow. It's a tough one. But yeah, I think there's work to be done there. I think from, there's, to go back to Rob's question, in terms of armory tenants and skirmish tenants, I think, partly time of year it is tough anyway, and maybe that's an expectation that doesn't need to be held. But I do think if you are trying to, especially skirmishes in particular, I do think that comes from LGS running the right events at the right time, the community itself, but also I think LSS needs to make sure that they're doing their part and making sure they're funneling players into those events, because it can't just all be LGS and community driven.
Yeah. It's interesting. I honestly don't know the answer, unfortunately.
That's a tough one.
I really don't know the answer, but at the same time, I don't think that I understand understand what motivates players to attend armories week to week at this point in the life cycle of the game enough to really weigh on like how could we motivate them more, how could we get more attendance. I'm just detached from it because I think about like why why would I go to an armory? And for me, it pretty much is just a social experience. If I want, like, maybe I want to play with my physical cards, that's one thing, but it is a bit niche. But if I wanted games, I would, there's Talishar. If I wanted, to play with a friend, I could hit them up and, play over webcam or play on Talishar. It's like, what would motivate me to go to an armory? And for me, it's like, promos probably wouldn't do it because they're so inconvenient for me. But let's say they're very convenient. Promos that were financially viable and a community experience that was like enjoyable. It's just a social outing, right? But that's not LSS based. That's local game store to local game store, right?
I will say one thing. So I played a lot of armories this time last year because Dynasty was fresh. So like people weren't really testing. There wasn't, PT1 wasn't for a while. So it was a good opportunity to go to armories, like mess around with some stuff, try some decks. This is where I was actually making a bit of content as well because I was able to go and play with these decks and try them out. There's new cards around. And I actually think as much as Dynasty as a set, you can, go to the side and talk about that and what that set did or didn't do. At least it sort of injected around a quieter period of time, some opportunity to have some new cards in hand. And honestly, maybe that isn't the right approach. And maybe LSS has reflected and said, didn't get the attention it needed. It was in a down period of time, wrong time to release a set. But, it was interesting to have a new product in hand for December, January and being able to do something with it. So
I just think, sorry, this is tangenting slightly, but I'm going back to another point. I think it's funny how because I actually kind of agree with you here. Like I'm circling back around to like, oh, maybe like XP qualifying you for relative or important events is like is a good concept because like I always hated the idea of XP because like I don't know, it just incentivized a way of playing the game that I didn't really enjoy and I didn't think was conducive to competitive integrity. But that being said, if there's nothing motivating players to go to armories, and that was a significant motivator for a lot of players, not just the Brody Spurlocks, then maybe it was a good system. I don't know.
But that's still happening right now because PTLA is still XP invite. So
okay, well then I guess it's not relevant.
I don't know. All right, let's move on. Thanks for the question, Rob. YouTube comment section, Brendan, do you want to take us into it?
Yeah, first one here is from New Jersey Dama. They say, hearing Brendan talk about Sam Sutherland is such a proud moment. He works at my local armory and I'm lucky enough to talk and learn flesh and blood from him. In addition to him being such a great person, also learning. The community is so good. It's such a great thing to experience. Yeah. I met Sam for the first time in person in Barcelona. It just seems like a nice guy, to be honest. It's just like it's the Australian archetype. You're just all cheery and nice, I feel like, on the aggregate. Yeah, it's weird.
I don't know. Wouldn't know. No.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. Yeah, that's because you're from New Zealand. All right, this one's from the Legal Custodian. Regarding the point of buying your way into the Pro Tour and the World Championship, I agree that one should be able to enter high-tier tournament events only through winning in their own merit. But you should have to consider that high-tier tournaments are big marketing events for the game as well. Fab has to show full tournament events with sweaty butts and seats. Why are they sweaty? If you already have a barrier of entry and people with tickets to enter don't come, that is a problem. This is alleviated through the ability to sell off PTIs to people who want to show up. It's a win-win. LSS has full seats, PTIs get used, and the seller gets at least some money for his efforts to achieve it. And Arano has a shot at big money and still has to prove his ability on the site. Yeah. We have another comment about PTIs. There's three. Yeah.
There's three in total.
Well, so I think that when you look at this, I think this is a very reasonable argument. And I don't disagree with it. But we have a few comments that are talking about the results of the PTI selling system and how it has ended up in a good situation in this case. And I think it's a little bit utilitarian, right? Where we get past, it's like, oh, well, this good thing happened, so therefore the system is good. I don't necessarily think the system is terrible for the game. I don't actively hate it. It doesn't actively bother me. But I do think the concept of buying yourself into these pro tours is just lame when everybody else being there is earning it. And I think that if you had to earn it, it would make it more prestigious. It would make the pro tour feel a bit more special. That being said, I think that my view could be just way too romantic and is potentially not reasonable. So maybe this is just a net positive system for the pro tour. But I do think that I just can't get past. I do think that buying PTIs is just lame. I don't think you should be able to pay your way into the pro tour when there's other people that are out there grinding, working really hard. It doesn't. Again, buying your way into the pro tour doesn't mean you're going to get shit. You're just going to go there and lose, most likely. But It's just like there's all these other systems have been built up that are, you know, these competitive pathways for people to climb the ladder and make their way to the Pro Tour. And then, you know, Johnny from wherever just buys one for $500. It definitely hurts the competitive integrity a little bit, but that doesn't mean it destroys it. And it doesn't mean it necessarily has to be, you know, taken away.
Why don't I read the next two and then we can circle back on this. I'll kind of hold my thoughts until then. Little Mag126 says, I think being able to buy PTIs helps the prestige of the events because being a pseudo-professional is so much more realistic when you can sell off excess PTIs and buy into tournaments that you may not have had the luck time to qualify for. Interesting. I think kind of, you know, there's kind of a little bit of some similarity to what you said, but also a counterpoint there in terms of the...
It's a little cart before the horse because it's like, I guess not in the way this is phrased, but it's cart before the horse to say like, oh, this is like part of the pricing structure for a battle hardened, incentivizes battle hardened attendance because you can sell the PTI. It's like, well, we could also just, you know, go before that and change the compensation structure so that they're inherently, you know, they motivate players to come.
Yeah. And then Mara Faris, top 4 Pro Tour competitor, says, figure I should weigh in on the buying PTIs thing. I'm the player Hayden briefly mentioned that made top 8 of Pro Tour Baltimore after buying my PTI. I live in an area with incredibly competitive ProQuest. SCG is my LGS, and I don't think any pro player in the game that won't tell you and I don't think there's any pro players in the game that won't tell you that there's always a little bit of luck to winning a tournament. And lead up to PT Baltimore, I top 8 of 5 ProQuest, 2 Battle Hardens, and 3 PTI events, and still ended my season without an invite. So I bought my PTI. I don't see how my attendance at the PT diminishes the competitive integrity in any way. I think the PTI system is probably one of the best things to happen to Flesh and Blood. And if someone who would never otherwise be able to earn their way to the event wants to pay $600 for the chance to say they went 0-3 drop at the Pro Tour, go for it. Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of the point I was talking about last week in terms of some of the regionality as well, in terms of, you know, where it might be a bit tougher to get them. Because, you know, this is the thing, right?
There's regionality and everywhere, though, at every level.
Right.
There's callings are regional, Pro Tours are regional, armories are regional.
Well, but Pro Tours, if that's your point, right, is the best of the best, then Pro Tours aren't truly regional, right? Like, let's use an example, and I'm going to use a country here that I don't even know if people... Okay, let's use Guatemala, right? Let's just say Guatemala's got a ProQuest and 5 people show up to the Guatemalan ProQuest, and does that person's invite from... And again, no offense to Guatemala, I've just pulled around a country out that I'm not sure even has supported play here. You know, they get there, one person who gets the invite. Is that invite equal to the person who had to play 90-person?
Yes, it is equal. It's just not fair, and that's just how it is. It's been like that since the inception of the game. Like, it's been like that in Road to Nats. It's always been like that. There are soft areas. There's soft ProQuests and there's hard ProQuests. But that, I mean, that is applied to like things that exceed Flesh and Blood as well. Is like they're just asymmetric and they're unfair, and that's okay.
For sure,
that's okay.
But doesn't that diminish the prestige though? No,
because I just don't think you can do anything about that. It's not this artificial system that's tacked on the top that's hurting the integrity. I mean, it's just how I just don't think you could make it I don't think you can make it fair in terms of like eliminating, you know, soft versus hard. That's like a weird way of putting it. Like qualifiers, but yeah. I mean, you're right. Like, I mean,
I don't agree. Disagree.
Does it diminish the competitive integrity of the Pro Tour because you can effectively cheese the way getting an invite, right? Like, I have more disposable income than you, so like effectively the same thing as buying a PTI. I have more disposable income. I can fly to. I feel so sorry for our Guatemalan players to Guatemala and go win this ProQuest potentially, and get my invite. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're just different to me, and I don't know if I have the words in my brain to articulate it at this point. But my firm view about prestigious events like the Pro Tour, like even for players like Mara Faris, even for you, me, like everyone, I think it should be okay to not make it. Like, it should be okay. Like, it should be something that's very hard to make. And even players that can win the tournament that deserve to be there might not make it this time. And that's why you grind for it. Like that just adds that level of aspirational sort of content. I don't know. It's just, it's a hard conversation to have, but before you get into all the semantics, I just go back to the foundation, which is buying your way into the Pro Tour to paying for PTIs that other people are earning through competitive merit is, in my opinion, not a cool system. It doesn't mean it hasn't ended up in some good scenarios and it's not maybe a net positive thing for LSS, for the game. It's just, I don't like it. It just puts a bad taste in my mouth, to be honest. And I mean, that's okay. It's just an opinion.
The funny thing is, though, is I think that this happens in every single sport and game. Like, to an extent, people pay their way. I mean, I'll take like Formula One as an example, right? Like some of the that is not the top 20 drivers in the world that are driving in Formula One. It is like probably the top 8 to 10, and then a lot of them are, they've had circumstance, they've had the right backing. Financially, it's a very expensive sport. It's the same with, like yachting, all these expensive sports that, like, if you don't get the financial support when you're younger, you're never going to get the opportunity to do it. And also, you can extend that to Magic the Gathering, right? Magic the Gathering has not had this buy and invite system, not directly, but many people have bought their invite to the Pro Tour through various ways, including one of them being, you go to a Teams event where you go to Teams GP and the top 8 get Pro Tour invites, while you pay to have 2 of the best players sit on your team and play for you effectively.
Yeah.
And that has happened many a time.
I prefer systems that are like, I prefer systems like that where the players themselves are subverting the system and exploiting the system, rather than the system itself inherently has an exploit in it that they are sort of sanctioning. It just makes it, I don't know. There's no other way to put it than I think it's lame. Like, and that it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's not a fact. It's just my opinion is like, I just don't really like it. And again, I enjoy using the system. I do. But I think it would be cool if the Pro Tours and the World Championships were merit-based only. And that might end up in some players that absolutely deserve to be there, could win the entire thing, maybe not qualifying one time. Mm-hmm. But that's okay as well.
Yeah.
It's okay to qualify.
I think feel free to drop your comments and replies. I think we'll leave this off.
I don't know where else we can go with this one, man.
Yeah, we're done with this now, I think. I'll say that I'm probably, I'm not directly opposed to Brendan on this one, but I'm a bit further away than he is. I think the system is, I've come around on the system. But anyway, let us, feel free to drop your thoughts, but we won't be reading them on next week's pod. I think we're done with the topic of buying PTIs. So let's move on.
Next one is from Hashatter. I know, this has been getting me for years.
We're gonna get cancelled one day for these people's YouTube handles.
HS Shatter is the actual name. All right, isn't Kano an aggro hero just a weird combo build? Though I can definitely understand if you separate wizards from the definition of aggro and fab. I think I'm an aggro specialist, though I definitely am not special in the skill sense. I go between any aggro deck. I definitely have to learn new details for each class and hero, but how I approach playing against each individual hero is viewed through the same lens, applying different versions of the same tools. I'm definitely limited. I've definitely limited myself by not playing a hero I was familiar with because I thought she was poorly positioned. Also, keep going, Sam. Definitely helped me learn Dash by watching us play. I really like hearing your take. You make me think about mundane fab stuff. Fun. Thanks for the videos, Hayden and Brendan.
Yeah,
work through that one. It's like you ever been in when you're in elementary school as a kid and you have to do the reading comprehension for the class and they would do like the popcorn reading?
Dude, don't even worry about being in elementary school. I've been in like training sessions for work where the HR have asked people to read stuff.
Oh, you read this paragraph, anyway. You're like, what the fuck?
Oh gosh, no one wants to volunteer. So this is in reference to last week. Obviously, the pod was talking about being a specialist and why, we presented the argument of why being a specialist in 2024 could potentially be a very good spot to be in Flesh and Blood. Talking about Kano as an aggro hero. First of all, I think the problem is that aggro is, and we've talked about this before, aggro is such a terrible terminology in Flesh and Blood. Like, it just doesn't really work. And we talked about Gorganian Tome Dylan's video where he broke down kind of fab as a fighting game and presented, some different archetypes to potentially use. And one of the ones I think applies the best that Gorganian Tome presented was this rushdown archetype, which feels it's a bit different to aggro. It's a bit more similar to the fighting game aspect. And I think that works a lot better with the quote unquote more aggro style of decks in Flesh and Blood. And I think Kano is, whether it's in that rushdown category or not, it's very explosive. I don't think it would fit the traditional aggro term, but yeah, I think there's a lot of people who identify with rushdown or aggressive decks in card games, and I think honestly it's really hard to find a home in Flesh and Blood, especially recently. Like, I think I look back like 6 to 9, 12 months ago, you had like Fi and Briar and Katsu, and you had so many different kind of aggressive decks, and a lot of those, Lexi even, and a lot of those have like kind of disappeared and it's become more mid-range. And I think trying to identify with an archetype that isn't more mid-range or control or whatever you want to call them in Flesh and Blood, but is more rush down, aggressive, explosive damage based is actually really hard right now. So I feel for hatter on this one.
Well, do you think Kano's a rushdown hero? That's the thing. Is like,
nah, I don't actually.
Yeah, Kano's just like Kano gets a bad rap for Aether Wildfire combo, but it's actually a very non-linear deck that has like many ways to win the game. No, I mean it is. It is. Yeah, it is.
But I think it's like 80% of the deck is, but often 80% of the way you play the deck.
Yeah.
In
it's
certain
just
situations
anything
is not
outside of
that.
Aether Wildfire is dog shit. So you end up doing that most of the time.
Can be.
Yeah. All right. Next one is from BB Paintball. They say Olympia can snowball the wagers and will be a big attack action warrior that can end the chain with a weapon attack. A gold token fixes hands and cash in can blow out in warrior where you draw into more go again or reactions. Decimator Axe will be able to gain tokens at will and set up a series of turns that have might, vigor, and agility available to have multiple big attacks.
I mean, that's the theory, right? That's like peak Flesh and Blood theory. I think is that Olympia is going to be like this kind of snowbally deck that uses the gold and wages and leaks damage and has all these like amazing breakpoints because every card is worth like 4 and has that is peak theory. Whether this plays out, I honestly think we need to see more of the card pool first. Like I've seen so many takes on like X. I know you're off X at the moment, Brendan. Twitter. I'm just gonna call it Twitter. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Because at some point,
I mean, who calls it X?
It'll become Twitter.
Only dweebs.
It'll be called Twitter again. I think, people are like, oh, Kasai is already the best warrior we have with like the card pool, and Olympia is already the best warrior we have with the card pool. I mean, I think we need to see more cards. So far, there's a lot of like peak theory in terms of what Olympia and Kasai can be, but I think they are not those things yet. So we'll see. But I get the thought process, and Decimator X is a really interesting weapon. I mean, I think if you're going to flip over Decimator X, you're still going to be encountering a lot of the same problems, like how do you ever beat Dromai and things like this. But people have time, and
Dromai
we've still got a lot of. Well, we've still got a lot of cards to see from heavy hitters, as I was going to say, but yeah, maybe that too.
Yeah, definitely. All right, next one is from Mod Tyrant 1784. I feel specialization is for the birds or elitists. I don't know what that means, for the birds or elitists. Over specialization would leave you with too many weaknesses. I think it's just odd not to play other characters. Just from a value for your time/money perspective. If your only goal is to get good at one character, why even playing it in the first place? You might as well enter a league of a different game where there are no characters that reward, and then the rewards are greater.
I think this person's just wrong, to be honest. Like, thank you for the comment, but I think Flesh and Blood is a game that specifically can allow you to play any number of characters you want. And if you identify with one, or you only want to play, because they were saying, and interestingly, they're saying, that like specialization is for the elitists. Like, I feel like specialization is for like everyone. I feel like everyone can be, like, I honestly think it's almost kind of the opposite. I feel like some of the elitists are like, I play everything.
It's
I specialize in everything.
It's definitely the opposite. You just happen to see some elite level players also specializing, which is like the weird phenomenon that's going on.
Or no, you know what you see, and this is where I think this is coming from, is you see some of the people with the loudest voices in the room be one trick heroes, or specifically focused on heroes, because they're probably content creators.
And they won't shut up about Kano. Yeah. Okay.
That's actually directly pointed at you. But I think this kind of, you talk about, Mod Tyrant talks about kind of the value or time for your money perspective. I mean, I can go either way, because I think time spent can often be better spent on a single hero, or even your money could be better spent on a single hero. So I honestly just kind of disagree with this point, but I think it's interesting. I think I can see where they're coming from and where this kind of comment is coming from, but I just don't think it's true. I think that specialization is for everyone. I think it's really interesting in a game like Flesh and Blood, because I think it can really allow you to do this, and I think that's kind of one of the cool things about the game, honestly. So yeah, let's close it out. We've got a couple of comments, a couple of small one-liners for you, Brendan. Tom, because I just know it's Tom. Thomas says Azalea in 2024. Let's go. Andrew says Viserai now, Viserai forever. And Pop King says Olympia has the most vanilla NPC ass style, which I thought Brendan would appreciate.
It's true. It's true. The younger hero looks better. It does.
It's true. It's true. So yeah, specialization in 2024. All right.
Yeah.
Main topic time, Brennan.
He's not going to win the Pro Tour, I'm telling you.
Okay, you want to start with that? Because we got a bit of a split main topic.
No, he might win the Pro Tour. So Rhinar looks really good. So there's more to the main topic. Obviously talking about the other heroes a bit. But Rhinar,
we're going to talk about limited, but we're going to talk about Rhinar winning the Pro Tour first. Because
Rhinar looks really good. Like, beat Bonebreaker Bellow. I'll read out the card because it's new. It's a brute non-attack action at common. It costs 1. This is the red one. It blocks for 3. It has beat chest. It says, as an additional cost to play this, you may discard a card with 6 or more. It means you get the pick. It says your next brute attack this turn gets +3 if you have beaten your chest. By the way, it's a May ability. This turn, instead, it gets +5. Oh, bro. And it has go again. I didn't even notice. Oh my God. That you just have to beat chest once. You only have to discard once.
You can play... Yeah, you can beat chest off another card, then play this, and okay, all right.
It's better than I thought it was, and I thought it was good.
So we obviously over the weekend showed that Rhinar was coming back. That was our preview. Thank you to LSS for giving us the opportunity. It was great to, as much as I posted up on Twitter, Brendan, don't know if you saw this. I said, do you think LSS were trying to do this out of kindness, or this was a direct slight against me giving us Rhinar?
I don't think I should answer
that. All right. But Beat Chest is an awesome mechanic. We also got to show No Mercy, which is Rhinar specialization. It is a brute action attack at red. It's majestic. Defensive 3, attacks for 6. It says, when this attacks a hero, intimidate them. If the defending hero has no cards in hand, this gets +3 attack. Now, I was talking about this card on our Patreon pod, so I'm going to share some of the same sentiments. But I also was... Rampage. This card is insane. Like, that second line of text is a static ability, because people are like, oh, so you have to intimidate their whole hand before you get this. No. They can't block this, because if they put cards down to block, so if they go down to no cards in hand, then this triggers and you get the +3.
It's actually hilarious. It's so funny.
Really strong.
It's actually
really strong.
I wonder if everybody saw that the first time they read it, because if the defending hero has no cards in hand, it gets +3. That's a funny interaction.
It's such a good combination with Barrage and Beatdown as well.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. You said, are we getting the Azalea treatment? Are we getting the Ranger treatment?
Well, that's my question. That's the thesis of this. That's what I want to talk about.
It looks better. Like the Ranger card.
Come on.
It does.
Codex of Inertia? Codex of
that card, that card's an outlier. Maybe we'll get one of those as well. But just like the General Ranger card, you remember like the arrows we got? We're like, oh, these arrows are just like more powerful than some of the other arrows we have. The non-attack actions we got as well were like nuts. These cards, I think, look more powerful. I do.
Yeah, I think so. There's a third card which I'm less excited about, but I have seen some people actually talk about this and be a little bit excited about it. So we also showed Rawhead Rumbler, which is a rare cycle of brute attack actions. Defensive 3, the red attacks for 6, cost 2. Has beat chest, as we just talked about, and says when this attacks a hero, if you've beaten chest this turn, intimidate. So you could 3-card combo this with your, 4-card combo this with your Bonebreaker. Let's just see what that looks like. So you play your Bonebreaker Bellow, you beat the chest, you discard your 6 attack, you pitched a blue to play this, then you play your Rawhide Rumbler. So you've gone 4-card 11 for double intimidate. It's not particularly great. So I don't know. I'm not big on Rawhide Rumbler, but it might be good. But Show No Mercy and Bonebreaker Bellow in particular, I'm very excited about. So I think I just want to present a couple of things about why I think Rhinar looks so good. Is Rhinar going to win a Pro Tour? I don't know. But it does look like... And are we getting the Ranger treatment? Maybe we're getting the Azalea treatment, but not the Lexi treatment. Might be my thesis on this a little bit. But I think, first of all, Show No Mercy, very, very powerful. It's just a direct upgrade. It's like at its floor is like a slightly worse pack hunt. Its ceiling is an infinitely better Alpha Rampage that effectively, it costs you 1 card less and combos with some really powerful cards in your deck. The beat chest mechanic, if we see a couple more cards with beat chest, I think this is what's really going to push Rhinar to being like a tier 2, maybe even tier 1 deck, because it fixes a lot of the issues that Rhinar's had with dealing with kind of... So you can have good matchups with Rhinar, but sometimes you just lose the game to your variants. You can't, the discard aspect of it isn't where you need them. You discard the wrong card at the wrong time. Now all of a sudden you've beat chest, and now you get to leverage some of the most powerful discard effects in your deck. Like, now I can make sure that this Beast Within is the card that's discarded, so I get the value off of it, or it's not the card that's discarded, so I don't die to it. I can now make sure I discard the Skullcrack to get extra resource off of this. So now all of a sudden you can make sure that you're getting. Or I make sure I discard the Massacre, so I get the trigger off it. Making sure that you get the right Does Trick Off Massacre or is Massacre non-attacks only? I have to check that. Massacre might be attack actions only. Yeah, that one might not work. But basically, being able to make sure that you discard the right card, or I make sure I don't discard my blue that I need to finish off the rest of my turn, or I make sure that I don't discard my Blood Rush Bellows that I'm going to arsenal for next turn. Like Beat Chest as this kind of mechanic that reduces the variance of Rhinar on pretty good rate cards is really, really strong, honestly.
Massacre has to be discarded to pay the cost of an attack action card.
There you go. So yeah. The cost. So you can on an attack action with Beat Chest it does work though, but not on a non-attack action.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's really good.
It's good. It's good. It just seems so. Let's talk about fundamentals. We have been talking about Brute, or I mean, you have been talking about Brute for a while, and we constantly
about 3 years.
Constantly, about 2 years. Constantly talk about the direction they've taken Brute. It's like, Brute is just forever going to be ass because it's just variance. They double down the variance. They cut out the floor, raise the ceiling. Yay, we have these high rolling cards that can do crazy things. Well, they just did the opposite of that. They just made you like the amazing floor. Like the floor is so good on these cards. It took everything that was bad about Brute, almost everything, and basically deleted it.
To an extent.
Sit with that.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's really, really good. It's so consistent. And that's really what Brute was lacking. I still don't know how you're gonna struggle with some other. You're gonna struggle with things like Dramai. I'm sure you're gonna struggle with some strategies. Maybe. You're not. Not Dramai. Sorry, I meant Fi.
Aggro.
yeah, Fi. Still gonna struggle with like these hyper aggro decks. But I mean, I think you will, unless these cards are just powerful enough. But I think we talked about the math on the Patriot part. It doesn't seem like you'd be able to outvalue them turn to turn.
So yeah, but I have been thinking about this.
Okay.
So I think one thing that this does do, so you get a little bit of a power bump, and then you also get a bit of a consistency bump. Because one of the problems that you kind of have with beating these aggro decks is like, I almost feel like you had close to no chance unless you just straight out high roll them with like, and originally Blood Rush Bellows turns, basically. What you do get to do now is that if your opponent, say the Fire player, has an off turn, like, their 4 cards are just kind of whatever, and this can happen with Fire, then your hands are going to be, your floor is going to be a lot higher than they used to be. Because sometimes you'd line up, your Fire opponent would kind of have an off turn. They might, not draw a blue in their hand or whatever, or they draw like the double Art of War turn or whatever it is. And they need to set up. And then you look at your hand and you're like, wow, I literally I need to block with this hand. I have like 3 attack actions, no good way to punish. My Intimidate does nothing here, whatever. Because Intimidate, pretty whatever against aggressive decks. But all of a sudden you've got more powerful cards. You've got kind of this, your floors being raised in terms of your consistency. And now you can actually kind of push back on the turn, leak more damage than you could have previously, or present more of an issue than you could have previously. And then you still have the big powerful turns. So while I'm not saying it's now going to fix the matchup, I do think that some of these cards and just inherently what they do and how you line up in some of these matchups is going to be a bit better than it had been before. Plus, you're fixing some of your matchups that were quote-unquote good matchups before, but you could just lose to yourself or lose to the value inherently that something like a Bravo could present out. Now you kind of have your own value as well. Plus, you have the Intimidate mechanic. Plus, you have these big combos. Plus, you kind of have some of these other high-ceiling cards. So I think it all gets better. Is it better enough? Is it good enough? Does it improve enough in terms of your aggressive matchups?
I don't know. I'm happy.
I don't know if it's enough.
I'm happy to take all the hate.
All right, you're going to take it?
Yeah. I think it's good enough. I think these cards look insane, and I think the Beat Chest mechanic is something that I thought that LSS would never print. Never.
Me too.
Never.
I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah.
I have one remaining issue with that Rhinar has to face, and I think that's your cost curve and your resource base, because I think a lot of these cards want you to play more blues, and we're already seeing people moving up to like 19, 20, even 22 blues in some cases in the decks, and your blues are kind of crap, right? Like you don't have the blue 6s, this eternal kind of when's the next blue 6 coming? You still only have Wrecker Romp for Rhinar. You still have that
answer
issue
to that. When is the next blue 6 coming?
Well, never, but don't play KO. But the other issue is like you how do you fill these cards in your deck? Like now you have to play small blues. That kind of counteracts Beat Chest a little bit to a degree, honestly, because you get more consistency in your cards, but your resource base now has to adapt. You want to play yellows because yellows are the best. They have 6s. They're not the best, but they do the thing you want in Rhinar. But now all of a sudden your cost structure has more 3-cost things in it. Bonebreaker Bellow plus a club, for instance, is 3 cost. Show No Mercy, 3 cost, all these things. So can you even play the yellows that you want to play? So I think that's going to be the resource space, and the cost curve is going to be Rhinar's challenge. So it'd be interesting to see if we get any cards that can potentially help fix that. Honestly, all it takes is like probably one more really good blue. It doesn't even have to be a 6 attack, but just one blue that has this kind of modality to it would be interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. And if it's a blue 6, then all bets are off.
Well, of course. Done. We're moving through. That would be the ultimate. That would be crazy if they printed they were just like, oh, here, and by the way, here's a blue 6.
Yeah, I just can't stress enough how much I thought that beat chess would never exist as a mechanic in this game. I thought that we were 100% going towards more dice roll, more randomness, and this is the absolute opposite of that.
Yeah, I just think, just to kind of round out, my one concern is that these cards look so great, and then when you go and put the deck together, because of this cost curve and resource structure, it actually just kind of nets out to being about as what it was before, because you just lose consistency in your resource space. And it's just, because that's happened before. We've seen these cards and we're like, wow, these are so powerful. And then you put the deck together and you're like, oh, actually, this solves the problem that we had, but it's also created a new problem. And now we're kind of around the same space that we were in terms of the power level. So
Rhino's got some OP cards, man. Like, swing big.
It does, but your opponent has to want to block.
Yeah.
All right, should we talk a little bit about limited with heavy hitters, because we are now, like, we're in January, we're 3 weeks away from the world premiere. I'm super excited, going to be there on the Friday for the world premiere, then playing the calling. It's kind of an odd one. Like, we're going to play the calling, world premieres on Friday, and then calling starts on Saturday, and it's a calling of this new set, an unreleased set. So it's going to be very interesting.
That's what's up. That's like the best. That's
I'm
awesome.
excited for it.
I'm so happy they did that. That's awesome. They haven't done that yet, have they?
No, this is the first time. But can I share one thing that I'm a little bit concerned about? Is I feel like you're really incentivized to like grind on the Thursday night.
Absolutely do that. You should absolutely do that.
I know. I feel like you have to, but I don't want to.
Load up the spoilers into some online emulator, whether it's TTS. There's not Draft Fab now, but one of those, and you should definitely do that. It's a calling. You should definitely try to get ahead.
I think you play the world premiere and then you try and enter a couple of the side events on the sealed side events and get the packs so that you can do some sealeds.
For sure. And you can also bring together all your world premiere pools, right?
For sure. Alice is going to make a lot of money off that, though, because there's going to be a lot of people wanting to play side events on Friday to get as many reps as possible. It's smart.
That's sweet, though. Like, that's going to be such a cool calling to watch. Unfortunately, it's limited. But if a limited calling was ever going to be watchable, it'd be that one. It's
this one.
Yeah.
But, what would make it really watchable is making sure the draft was recorded.
Good luck with that.
Yep. I might, Man-Sant, if you're listening, how do we make this happen?
He does not have the power to do that. It's not a slight on Man-Sant. Right. I just know. No. I know the tension behind the scenes. It is hard no.
Everyone send letters to LSS saying we want the drafts to be recorded.
Honestly, if all of you listen to this, talk more shit about it, that's what will make a change. It's not us.
Everyone jeet.
Yeah, jeet about it.
All right, let's go through what we know so far about heavy hitters. So it's a 6-hero set, 3 classes. We have hybrid cards, which are going to be very, very important for limited. And this time with our hybrid cards, unlike Outsiders where we had just the 2 wedges, Ninja and Assassin Ranger, but no... what did we not have? We had no Ninja Ranger, right? Wait, which one did we not have? Ranger, Assassin. What am I missing?
Aren't you the expert? Limited time only. I'll let you learn the format from you.
We had 2 wedges. This time we have all 3 wedges. So you have Guardian, Brute, Guardian, Warrior, Brute, Guardian, Warrior, Brute, Warrior. There we go. The 3 wedges. So all 3 classes have a wedge between them, whereas last time we only had 2. I got there in the end. And I think it's pretty clear that the hybrid cards are going to play an even bigger role than they did in Outsiders. And they were already pretty important in Outsiders, but some of them, I think LSS has probably learned a lot from Outsiders in terms of what those hybrid cards did, because some of them didn't quite fit, I think, in Limited in terms of like the right power level, the right kind of fit for the archetypes as well. And then we're also in a set with all weapons. So previously we look at Outsiders as another kind of core limited set. We had Rangers. So we had heroes that didn't have traditional weapons. They didn't have attacking weapons. Whereas this set, we've got our Guardians, our Warriors, and our Brutes, and they're all going to have weapons that attack. So that really changes. I know, Brendan, you explain. What does that do to the dynamic of the limited format?
Well, I was about to say something. I don't know. Well, I can speculate. So, weapons that attack. I think that maybe we could also say good weapons. I think that there's been, in the past few formats, there's been heroes that have access to, I don't know, very consistent weapons, and other heroes that have to jump through a lot of hoops for their weapons, but it may be paid off with power level of other cards and such. Let's look back at Welcome to Wraith. All the way back. That is a set that is consistent with all heroes having weapons that attack and all heroes having, pretty decent weapons.
The only set, by the way, right? The only set. And I think if we went back to Welcome to Wraith, Sealed and Draft, I think that Anathos would be a lot more powerful than it got credit for in the past. Can you imagine having a weapon that swung for... So what I'm getting to, the point is that... I wonder if one of these weapons will be too powerful and too consistent and really outshine the others. In the previous format where we had weapons that were similar to this, that wasn't the case, but I think that's because everybody was a noob back then. And now I'm interested to see if a limited format like this will be balanced or will be similar to like what would happen if we re-released Welcome to Wraith today with all the fab knowledge that exists. And I think that everybody would play Anathos because it's broken. Yeah. So, sorry, just to go back, we didn't have, in Outsiders, we had no Ninja, Ranger, Wedge. Sorry, I want to make sure I got that out there. So we had 2 wedges, but not the third wedge. So we also did have weapons in Bright Lights, but conditional weapons. So whether we get unconditional weapons this time, I mean I think we will.
Kasai's weapon is unconditional, right? The Centaur Saber is...
The weapons we've already seen so far are unconditional. So, yeah, I mean, I think one thing it definitely does is hopefully makes fatigue less relevant, but I'm thinking back to
probably makes fatigue more relevant. That's the problem. This is paradoxical. You think that fatigue exists because Viscera had the only weapon in Arcane Rising. Like, oh, what if we just gave everybody weapons? Well, then it actually often it just paradoxically makes fatigue even more important because it all is balanced around people attacking with their weapons, basically.
Let me introduce you to 2 mechanics that may prevent that. One is Overpower, which we've obviously seen previously, but now we're printing it on a hero. And the other one is a little mechanic called Intimidate, Brendan.
Yes, Intimidate is a great way to close out games. For sure.
Yep.
Is it going to be good enough?
Great way to avoid fatigue.
Yeah, it is a great way to avoid fatigue. Overpower. Honestly, I didn't give Overpower enough credit in Bright Lights, and Yuki taught me very quickly that I was wrong when she played on stream. But printed on the hero ability could be very, very good. I mean, Betsy does look like a very, very powerful hero, especially because she's getting that +1 as well, which is just absolutely nuts. I'm interested to see what cards exist in this format to combat Overpower. Because like we had the blocking cards.
Block. We've got block this time as well, right?
I haven't seen a block. Maybe I missed it.
We've seen a block. Yeah, we've seen one block. I've seen one block card so far. It is the Test of Strength, which is a generic block card. At common, red, blocks of 4. Okay. And says when this defends, clash with the attacking hero. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think one thing that's kind of on my mind is like how crucial a breakpoint's going to be as well.
Yep. So everything is a non-hit trigger in this format.
Because of Wager, that's going to be really interesting. I'm also... Clash is the one mechanic I'm a little bit so on. So if you haven't seen, we should make sure we're kind of going through this. So if you haven't seen Clash, and I just spoke that it's on Test of Strength. So Clash says clashing heroes reveal the top card of the deck. The hero that reveals the card with the greatest attack power wins the clash. And Test of Strength, for instance, the winner creates a gold token when you clash. So that one's going to be an interesting one to me. But Wage, I'm very, very interested in. So Wage is, of course... you may wager when you attack, and if the attack action hits, then you create the token. And if you don't, then the opponent creates the token. And I think that, honestly, I'm really interested in how this can play Unlimited in terms of just the skill test this has. And how, because not only when you wager as the attacking hero, but whether it's correct to block it out or not, and how you evaluate the trade of the card versus the token as the defending player, I think is going to be really interesting. Plus, Brennan, any potential combat tricks, any attack reactions that could be present as well to
which
kind of,
it seems like it's completely synonymous with what this format is going for. By the way,
right?
You want me to blow your mind real quick? Clash is my favorite mechanic. Probably Clash. One of my favorite mechanics in Flesh and Blood. I can't imagine a more quintessentially Flesh and Blood mechanic than Clash. It is almost pure variance at the face level on the first cycle, right? It's almost pure variance. Obviously, if you if you're playing a Guardian, your opponent's playing a Ninja, you're probably going to win the Clash. And yeah, that's also an aspect of Flesh and Blood, is you have this asymmetric dynamic where you have an advantage over your opponent in terms of satisfying the criteria for this mechanic. That being said, you have this somewhat high variance gambling mechanic that exists on the card, but you get the second cycle. And it's 100%. Now and I can't wait to watch or play some games where a Clash on the second cycle. I don't know how relevant the mechanic will be. We haven't seen it on too many cards quite yet, I don't think. But if there are big payoffs for this, how you could sort of pitch stack for that. And what you would be doing effectively is counter pitch stacking as well to set up a really nice Clash. That might be Magical Christmas Land, but I love Clash from a game design standpoint. I love it.
I don't know what my favorite mechanic is. Like, I thought for a while it might be Fuse, but
my favorite mechanic is Intimidate.
I mean, that's a bit toxic. I won't say that. I mean, I do really like Intimidate. I'm excited that it's returning to Limited. If you've played Welcome Trade Limited, I think it makes for a very interesting mechanic. I really like Rupture, actually. Just thinking about it, I really like Rupture. But I think Fuse might be still my favorite mechanic. Just Isolator Unlimited brought me so much joy. Yeah, okay. Well, I guess the other thing I'm considering as well is like the defensive value of the set. It looks reasonably high. Like Welcome to Wraith was the highest average defense value, and this looks like it might play out similarly. And that has an interesting dynamic in terms of just going back to the fatigue aspect as well. But also because of these breakpoints, I think it makes it quite interesting because in some sets, so there's been some sets where like an odd number isn't necessarily a breakpoint, or sorry, like an odd number hasn't necessarily been a breakpoint. Like in some sets, like 6 has actually been a breakpoint because getting 3. 2 cards that block 3 is really difficult to have in any given hand. So like actually 6 could be a breakpoint, but 5 wouldn't be, for instance, because and 4 sometimes, it was actually less desirable because you had all these 2 blocks. But 6 was a number that actually could be quite interesting. So I think in the set it's going to be more likely that 4 and 7 are going to be the more interesting breakpoints in this. But yeah, the other question I have is like, what does the average defensive value actually look like, and what will that mean for some of the mechanics plus potential fatigue as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm also going back to your other point. I'm really interested to see the attack and defense reactions, and we could potentially have this set. I don't think we've had a set with like too many attack and defense reactions since something like Welcome to Wraith, which was so headlined by things like, I mean, of course you had the entire warrior class in that format, but also things like Pummel and Razor Reflex, which is, that's an aspect of Flesh and Blood that we haven't had in a while. I feel like in Limited, like those, almost instant speed gotchas.
Yeah, it's the power level. And I think if they were going to do that, they'd have to reprint it, because a functional reprint of some of those cards would just be too good. I think.
Do you think so?
Too much
reprint Pummel?
I think it just gives too much critical mass for certain things potentially. So I think they'd have to be just reprints or just worse versions. Or we saw in Outsiders some worse specific versions. Like the ninja, the hybrid attack reaction, for instance, like just a worse Razor Reflex. I mean, so far we haven't seen any defense or attack reactions, right? We've seen block, and that is it, right? Yeah, I think we've only seen block, and that's obviously not a reaction. So we've seen the Majestic up the ante, which is a warrior attack reaction, but yeah, nothing in the Limited kind of sphere just yet. But again, we've got so many more cards to see from the set. We've seen a very, very small amount of them so far. So, what about gold? What do you think about gold in general? Like, gold is this interesting kind of thing where obviously it's mechanic based for a couple of the heroes, but also it kind of provides potentially some ways to fix some of the variance. If the game goes longer, you get to dump, it's a resource dump in some ways. I'm quite interested in how gold's going to play out in Sealed in particular, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen it in that use case quite yet, where it's actively using it as a more of a filter mechanic. It's kind of this mechanic, obviously in the Jermai deck. Yeah, where it's not really used for that. I don't know. I mean, gold's primary use case is, or at least its most obvious use case, is in things like Kasai, like the Warriors. But it as a filtering mechanic, as a way to reduce variance or limit variance, I'm not sure how often you're going to be creating gold tokens and cashing them in. It's really powerful. It can be really, really powerful, right? Because you pitch the blue, you destroy this, you draw the card. I'm not sure. I should speculate. I should put an opinion out there, but honestly, I just have no idea when it comes to specifically like how easy it will be able to create gold and how relevant that will be in terms of actually like thinning your deck and being able to go through it.
Yeah. It's the one that I'm the least unsure about, I think, in terms of what it's going to mean. I think breakpoints, wager, the defensive value, how block cards interact. I think overpower, intimidate. I think I have an understanding of what these might look like, but gold outside of what this means for, for Kasai and Warrior in general, I think it's going to be interesting. A couple of notes I had, and then I have a question for you. But I think in terms of the heroes, and I'm just looking towards playing some sealed and some draft. I'm looking forward to now, of course, the premiere and then the calling. I think KO is going to be really contingent on what this weapon is. I think I find it really hard to understand what KO might look like. It looks difficult
all
right
heroes
now.
Are contingent on weapons and limited, in my opinion. That's like,
I think this one's particularly so because I think I'm really struggling to understand what KO is going to look like in limited. Whereas I can kind of already see, based on the hero abilities, what Kasai is going to look like, what Olympia is going to look like, what Betsy's going to look like, what Rhinar is going to look like. KO, I'm really not as sure. Betsy, I think, looks really good and easy to understand as a hero for limited. I think it's going to be a go-to for a lot of people, especially in sealed. It has this kind of evasion. It reminds me of Bravo a lot. It's not too dissimilar to Bravo, right? Again, weapons can be interesting to see what that is.
Reprint Athos.
Definitely not. But I think, in terms of what they've learned from the hammer and from Anathos, Ultim's hammer, and then from Anathos, I think LSS are probably I think their weapon's going to be less powerful than both of those two token weapons. I think Kasai looks to be more like a combo kind of setup hero that can maybe flex, and Olympia to me looks like the more aggressive the hero when it comes to what those two look like in their potential archetypes. But that kind of leads me to my question for you, Brendan, which is like, are we actually getting archetypes? Because we have not had archetypes in some amount of time, but we're returning to a set that is Welcome to Wrath-esque, where we did have a lot of archetypes, and also we have these hybrid cards which potentially allow to draft these archetypes because you can stay open a bit better potentially.
Did we have archetypes in Bright Lights? Like a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit.
Yeah, you're right.
A little bit of archetypes in Bright Lights. I think
you're right.
More archetypes in Bright Lights than have been in like almost all sets.
Yeah. I mean, Outsiders didn't. Uprising didn't. Yeah.
Yeah. So, do I think we'll have archetypes? I have no idea. That is such a contextual question based off like what cards could potentially exist. I mean, the most archetype diverse format is probably Tales of Aria, but Welcome to Wraith has them as well. You did the video on that.
Wraith.
You think Welcome to Wraith? Yeah. So
I think personally, yeah. Just quickly in terms of in case you're listening, going what are archetypes in Flesh and Blood Limited? So if we look back at Uprising, for instance, as an example, the heroes are pretty one-dimensional. The decks wanted to basically look pretty much the same because it was power level driven and
game plans were the same too.
Yeah, the good cards were the good cards. Whereas in something like Bright Lights, you had a bit more synergy based things. There were cards that interacted a bit better together. You could have some archetypes. You could have some different Dash decks. You could have, Tickle Blossom decks just look like Tickle Blossom decks, I think. But Dash and Max in particular, you could have a bit more archetypes. Honestly, in terms of, there's some cards work better in certain builds of those decks. Some cards didn't work as well in some builds of those decks. And that's kind of what we mean when we say archetypes. Welcome to Wrath, I think, still had the most because there was a lot more generic pools and there was cards that were really specific. So, and the generics actually played into archetypes. Something like Slogism, for instance, and Regurgitating Slog was like really interesting. And you could fit those into like all four of the heroes in different ways. So I think there was more archetypes in Welcome to Wrath personally. But yeah, sorry, I thought I'd just quickly, in case people were like, what do they mean when they say archetypes?
Do I think we'll have archetypes in heavy hitters? I wish I had an answer. I don't know. I have no idea. Dude, how could
get
I
off the fence?
How could I say from these cards?
But do you hope that we get them?
Do I hope? Of course. I mean, without archetypes,
Yeah.
I think the draft formats are incredibly boring. Like, I thought the Uprising was such a boring format for drafting. You literally just drafted the best card, right?
Do you think... I think except for Icelander, but I think, generally kind of draft the best card. Do you think that the problem is just so hard to have archetypes of 14 card packs? Is actually the difference?
Sure, that's part of it. For sure.
How much of a part of it is it? Because at one point I was like, oh, this is like 80% of the fact that archetypes don't exist. It's 14 versus 15 cards. But I think it's less than that now. I think
if we drafted 4 Uprising packs, I think the decks would still... No, I think that they would still be the same. I think you would still be doing the same strat. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So like it's easy to look at the smoking gun and think it's the card packs, the 14 card packs in Uprising, but it's just the set design.
It's the design, yeah. I think the wedges, the triple wedges, the wedges between each of the classes is going to really make for some potential archetypes.
Yeah, it's in a 6-hero set.
Card design needs to be there.
Yeah, in a 6-hero set, I feel like we won't have archetypes, and the heroes will be archetypes in and of themselves.
That's kind of what Outsiders was, right?
Yeah, that seems to be what happens when we have more heroes versus less.
I would love to see the 6-hero set, but there's like 2 kind of distinct archetypes between each of the heroes, so you effectively end up with 12 archetypes that you could draft. That's what I would like to see. That's what I thought Outsiders was going to be, and then it became clear that basically only one of the heroes really had 2 archetypes, and the rest were pretty straightforward to build. But
my hope is that it's not just different flavors of fatigue, which I think that LSS is really learning a lesson on designing around that in Limited.
It's hard though. It's really hard to do.
Really hard
because the fundamentals of the game kind of really play to fatigue in a lower power format.
Absolutely, you're absolutely correct. I wonder if we'll get a limit on deck size in draft as well.
You mean more like different to the 40 that we currently have?
Yeah, like a 30.
Okay. I don't know. I just think that's, again, I hate crutches for design.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, they're obviously realizing that they have issues in sealed and even draft. I remember Tales of Aria, top 8, Dallas, non-vote drafts a 44 card, 46 card Oldhim deck.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Good luck beating that. And tons of healing. And so, it's just in these in these sets with high defensive values, it's definitely a risk, especially when the weapons exist. Weapons are both the best way to combat fatigue, but also the best way to enable fatigue. And I don't know which one is more true.
Yeah. I mean, the example used, like, everyone also let Nam have that deck and no one else tried to draft it. And I think if one person, I think fatigue is fine to be in the format.
Everyone else except me, right? I couldn't have drafted the Oldhim deck. I was in the perfect it's just like the draft go PM is like, how did you guys not do that?
Why did no one cut him? All right. Well, there you have it. Rhinar's going to win a Pro Tour and we're going to get archetypes in Limited with heavy hitters. We'll see. We'll wait and see how true that becomes. Brendan, do you want to take us out?
Yeah, well, I really do think the Rhino is going to be a very, very good deck. I think that they're signposting. I think Beat Chest is just a really powerful mechanic, and it's way more consistent than I ever thought that they would sort of venture into in terms of brute mechanics. So Rhinar is looking strong, and that could extend to other brutes as well. I mean, we haven't seen enough tools for KO. I asked Hayden on the Patreon pod about Leviah. He said absolutely not. So I'll trust his judgment, but these Rhinar cards look very, very good. Anyway, if you listen to this podcast, you enjoy it, then one thing you can do is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps a lot. There's a YouTube version of this at youtube.com/ArsenalPass, or both on Twitter at BrendanAPG and at Fien_Dale. And a special thank you to all of the Arsenal Pass patrons who got to hear about those Rhinars, those Rhinar cooked takes early in advance. I wonder if we're going to really eat our words on this Rhinar thing. But it does look...
You were more bullish than I.
I'll take it. It's whatever. It looks really powerful, and it looks like a Ranger treatment to me. The adding consistency into Brute is just... It's crazy, and I love it. I'm here for it. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next week.
See ya.